The heat had finally got to her. Once she had cried what felt like all she could cry, she moved slowly out of the burning room. Her only path was to exit out the door she had come in through. She pushed open the surprisingly cool door and walked through, the door closing shut behind her. The cool air struck her coat, causing her whole body to feel a bit of relaxation as her temperature cooled. She wiped her face, sniffing as she continued to try and regain her composure. Dash's words still echoed in her mind and gripped her heart. I can't stop now. Fluttershy gulped back more tears from spilling. I have to move forward. She looked into the room at the end of the hallway, expecting to see the pacing nurse. However, the room wasn't the same one that she had just come from. This room was small and square, with a staircase going up towards her. Fluttershy blinked at the sight, but the twisting, warping rooms had become something she was accustomed to. She stepped across the room but quickly reaching the staircase. She slowly began to climb upwards, seeing a sense of deja vu upon the climb. Her hooves nearly slipped on the slick steps as the stench of mildew hit her nose once more, and water dripped down the walls as she felt a sense of dread. Suddenly, she reached the top of the stairwell, and she knew where she was. She was back in the cloud home she had entered when she was first separated from her friends, only it wasn't a random cloud house anymore. It was her home from when she was a filly. The room she had just entered was her mother's room from when she was young. The same bed sat next to the window so that she could look out of it, the bookshelf that had contained the books she had read in her bed, the bedside table that had held her personal belongings, a desk and a chair, and the bathroom just a short walk away. Everything she'd need for living in her room while sick. Fluttershy was drawn to the bed. A force felt like it was guiding her, telling her to go near it. Her mind felt like a haze, flew past it. She stepped back. She saw the blood flash before her eyes on the bed and on the carpet, as if her mind was trying to reject the images, that there would be no stopping them. Her head began to ache with the pain, but she couldn't stop the memories. Her attention was drawn to the bed, as the memories that she had lost came back into full force, making her remember what had happened in the room so long ago. "Mother?" Fluttershy called out, walking into her mother's room. Her mother sat on the bed, a knife in her hoof as she was playing with it. Her hair was messy, unkempt and uncared for. Bags were underneath her bloodshot eyes, and she had seemed to be glaring at the knife, as if unhappy with it. "Mother," Fluttershy whimpered, walking further into the room. What would you like to eat today?" Her mother suddenly burst out laughing. Fluttershy halted her movements forward, looking up at her mother in shock. The older mare just seemed to have found something funny. "Oh yes, that will do nicely." The older mare smiled once she had finished laughing, turning her head to grin at her daughter. Fluttershy couldn't move, afraid of what her mother was about to do. "Come closer, my daughter," her mother said, twisting her body closer to the edge of the bed. Fluttershy began to hesitantly move closer to the bed. "I said closer! Ah!" Mother began to yell, but suddenly she fell from the bed, hitting the ground with a thud. "Mother!" Fluttershy cried out as she ran to her mother's side, trying to ensure that she was okay. Her mother groaned, but she slowly rolled over onto her side, so that she was facing her daughter. Once she could see her face, a wicked smile crawled onto her face. "My dearest daughter, oh, you came just at the right time. You see, I finally figured it out how to cure myself." Her mother gave another short laugh. Really? Oh, Mother, that's good news. I have to tell Father." "No, you can't tell Father yet," her mother hissed. Why not?" Fluttershy asked, confused. "Because only you could administer the treatment right now." Her mother laughed, carefully holding the knife up to Fluttershy. "And you'll need this to cure me." Fluttershy gingerly took the knife in her hooves, staring at it confused. I do it myself, but I'm far too weak to administer the treatment properly. But you can do it just fine." Her mother laughed. "And you want me to be cured, right? Cured and happy?" Of course I do, but what do I..." Fluttershy began to ask in confusion, but her mother seemed ready to answer. "That's simple, my dear child. You take the knife and you strike me with it." Her mother smiled. Fluttershy froze. That didn't sound right at all. She knew something was as sharp as a knife would hurt when you grazed its edge. But why would striking her mother cure her illness? But Mother, are you questioning me? Her mother glared at her. Fluttershy's skin jumped at the glare. No, but that sounds like you're questioning me, her mother growled. If she could only move with any decent strength, she'd have smacked her daughter. I need you to do this for me. Only you can do this right now. You do love me, right? That pulled in Fluttershy's heart. Of course I do, Mother. Then strike me, Mother demanded. Fluttershy took a gulp as she shakily raised the knife up over her head. She didn't want to bring it down. Her mind was telling her that doing this was wrong. The knife hovered in the air, unable to strike it down. Fluttershy! Her mother spoke, quietly, coldly. Yes? Fluttershy whimpered, still holding the knife up. You said you loved me, but you haven't struck me with that knife yet, so you lied to me, her mother said bitterly. No, I do! Then strike me! Mother yelled at her, making Fluttershy almost jump. Strike me! Love me! You're going to love me! Her mother's head snapped up off the ground, her mouth open as if to bite down on Fluttershy. The knife sailed through the air, embedding itself into her mother's side. Her mother's eyes went wide for a moment, before the wicked grin returned. Yes! Do it again! She demanded with a yell. Fluttershy pulled the knife out and slammed it back down onto her mother. Don't stop, were the last words Fluttershy heard from her mother. The knife rose and sank down into the body before her again and again. Each strike sent blood flying. Her fur was being coated and her mane was drenched. Each strike sounded like deafening, yet it was one of the quietest sounds in the world. It was as if the very knife was screaming at her, but only she could hear the screams of the blade. She plunged the knife in one last time. She panted, she cried, she shook. Her mother wasn't moving anymore. She wasn't speaking, she wasn't breathing, and she wasn't warm anymore. Fluttershy didn't know what this meant. Had she killed her mother like she had asked? Hadn't she put her through a lot of pain? Was she going to be okay? Fluttershy, haven't you got the answer from your mother yet? Her father walked into the room. Fluttershy slowly turned, tears streaming down her face, still holding onto the knife, covered in her mother's blood, sitting before the corpse of her mother. The air was silent. Then her father drew closer. Father, Fluttershy hiccuped, trying to say something to explain the sight before her father. However, she was silenced. Her father's hoof struck her hard. Her small body was sailing across the room and smashed into a wall. She let out a yelp of pain before hitting the ground. Her father picked up her mother's head in her hooves, and he began to cry. Tears streamed down her face. I killed my mother, Fluttershy whimpered. I killed. She cried. She couldn't believe she had done it, but she had done it. All because her mother had yelled at her, because she had been too weak and helpless to disobey her. Fluttershy felt her stomach twist. She felt like she was going to be sick. She turned and ran to the bathroom, waiting to escape the moment for even a short period of time. However, her brain assaulted her once more, a vision of memories forgotten appearing before her once more. There was silence as her father scrubbed away at her coat, washing away the blood that had begun to cake onto her fur. The hot water was managing to get most of it away, but some of it was being stubborn. He was being hard with the brush, harder than he'd ever been before. Fluttershy didn't speak up though. She couldn't speak up against it. Her heart felt like it was in a million pieces. Do you know what you've done? Her father finally asked. Fluttershy whimpered in her response. She couldn't say any words. You took your mother from us, her father said, as if his breathing was becoming more ragged and the brush stopped its cleaning. You took the most wonderful mare I've ever known out of this world. He gripped the brush harder and he started to speak through gritted teeth. You did it so quickly too. I sent you in to help her, and you killed her. Fluttershy's eyes burned with tears. Her father's words made her heart sting worse. "You're a monster," he growled. Without warning, he pushed her head down underneath the water. Fluttershy scrambled at the unexpected movement, her mouth and nose filling with water as air escaped her lungs. Her hooves flailed as she tried to push herself up out of the water, but her hooves holding her down was too strong. The air escaped her quickly and her lungs began to burn. She reached for air, but it would not come. Suddenly, she was lifted up into the air. Instinctively, she took a big gasp of air, only for her head to be shoved back underneath the water. She'd lost her air, and almost instantly again, her whole body was beginning to feel like it was burning from the movements. This repeated several times, getting a short breath of air only to have it painfully taken away by the water once more. Her struggling had lessened, and now she was too weak to push up against the water, too tired to try and get air. The hoof was holding her under was for good now. Her eyes began to roll into the back of her head as her limbs stopped moving. She couldn't stay awake any longer. She was pulled out of the water. Her body gasped and took in the fresh air before coughing up the water that had filled her lungs. She puked slightly as her body began to try and reject the water that had attacked her body. No, just killing you would be too easy," her father growled, watching her sputter and gasp for breath. "You need to understand the misery you've caused with your love." Her father let go of her mane, Fluttershy instinctively catching herself on the edge of the bathtub, still recovering from her father, and walked out. Fluttershy shook as she stared at the bathroom. Her father had tried to kill her. He could have killed her, but didn't. Though she felt like she deserved it at that moment. She had killed her mother in cold blood. Death sounded exactly what she deserved. She backed out of the bathroom slowly. She didn't want to be in that room anymore. She turned to the door to the hallway and quickly exited. She panted heavily outside her mother's bedroom as tears refused to stop. She slowly hobbled forward, having difficulty seeing where she was going. She reached to her fob, touching what felt like a door. Without thinking, she pushed it open, stepping inside. "So you sewed it back together, huh?" her father said, looking at the sloppy sewing job her daughter had done with her favourite doll. Yes, sir," Fluttershy replied meekly, lowering her head as her father held it. He wasn't impressed at all. All the stitches were visible. The stuffing was hanging out, the spots not sewn close enough, and the fibres would easily come loose if tugged on. "Unacceptable," he said before grabbing the doll and tearing it open. Fluttershy snapped her head up in shock as he watched. He tore apart all the seams and stitches. She had worked so hard on making the doll one piece again after he had torn it up the first time. Soon the doll lay in pieces of cloth and stuffing before her again. "If you love it, I shall destroy it," he said sternly. "Then it will be your job to put it back together again. And if you can't do it perfectly, then you don't deserve it at all." He walked out the bookshelf. Fluttershy whimpered as she began to pick up the pieces of her favourite, most beloved doll, Ashley. A book sunned itself before her, making Fluttershy almost jump. But she read the title carefully. "The Mastery of Sewing." "If you don't want to see your doll destroyed, you will make it look perfect," her father said before returning to his desk, going back to his work. Once she had all the pieces of her doll, Fluttershy carefully picked up the book with her mouth, careful not to stain it with her tears as she quickly left her father's study. Fluttershy whimpered. She was in her father's study. She had wandered in there by accident, but now she had seen more of what she had forgotten. She swallowed back more tears as she began to calm herself down, her mind beginning to put things together. I wanted to see this," she breathed heavily, reminding herself that she had chosen to come here, that she had told herself that there was no turning back now. "I have to see every memory, for my sake." She took a deep breath as she wiped her face with tears before pushing back onto the door of her father's study, exiting it. She stumbled out of the study a little, finding the kitchen that lay just on the opposite side of it. She steadied herself before walking into the kitchen. The haze returned as another memory surfaced. "What do you think you're doing?" her father yelled loudly. Fluttershy dropped the box of cereal she had picked up from the top shelf of the counter, her wings snapping shut to her sides as she fell a few feet before landing on the ground with a thud. Her father was furious. As he stormed up to her, Fluttershy trying to back away out of fear. He grabbed her hoof and forced her to eye level with him. "What have I told you about flying without permission? You are not allowed to do it, even in the house," he yelled at her, gripping her hoof hard. I'm sorry," she cried out as tears streamed from her eyes. Her hoof hurt like crazy as he gripped it hard. "I've told you before, bad fillies who don't listen to what they're told get eaten by dragons. Do you want to get eaten by a dragon?" No, Fluttershy cried out, struggling against his grip. "Well, you're attracting a dragon right now by flying as a bad filly. You must want to be eaten by a dragon. Why else would you be flying without permission?" Her screams made her ears feel like they wanted to burst. "No, I don't want to be eaten by a dragon. I'm sorry," she cried harder. "Well, you know what? I think I can hear a dragon. He's already pretty close because of you flown. Maybe I should just throw you outside so we can eat you right now," he hissed and growled. No, Daddy, please don't. I don't want to be eaten." Fluttershy wailed, afraid for her life. "Well, if you don't want to be eaten, there's only one thing I can do," he said, tossing his daughter to the ground. The wind escaped her body as she tried to scramble to her feet, only to have her father's hoof step on her, holding her down. His mouth reached down, gripping her hard on her wing, forcibly extending it despite all of her efforts to shut it. No, Daddy, please, stop!" she cried out as pain shot through her back, but it was too late. He wasn't going to stop. Fluttershy cried louder than she'd ever had before as her father snapped her wing. "There, now you won't be flying for a while, and you won't attract any dragons," he simply said, stepping off his wailing daughter. "I snapped it carefully. You'll be able to fly once it's healed. But we'll have to get you to the hospital to put a cast on it," he said through a grin that formed on his face. "Though only once a dragon has left." Fluttershy barely heard her father's words past her own screams of agony from the burning pain that echoed from her wing. Fluttershy gulped down 3 more tears, trying to hold herself back from crying. She slowly backed out of the kitchen. "My father, he was cruel," she whimpered softly to herself. I can believe that I made myself forget all this. It's all painful to remember." She shut her eyes, another tear escaping despite trying to force herself not to cry. She struggled with her hooves to make herself continue forward. Past the kitchen was the living room. She could see the front door from there. She knew that it was where she needed to head. Her instinct told her so. However, the living room once held the memory that she had to see. The haze returned as the memory came to her once more. "Where did you get that?" her father asked as silly Fluttershy walked through the door, carrying a candy bar in her mouth. "Oh, a colt gave it at school to me," she said quietly. "He said he liked me and wanted me to have it," she said, gently chewing on the end of the bar, savouring the sweet taste. "Oh, he did he?" her father said, walking up to Fluttershy. Fluttershy looked up at her father, taking a step back from him getting too close. Fluttershy fell to the ground as her father's hooves hit her hard across the face. The candy bar slid across the room. "Let me tell you about boys loving you," he growled, grabbing Fluttershy by the mane and picking her up, eliciting yelps of pain from the filly. "Colts will only hurt you. They only think of themselves and want nothing more than to see you suffer," he grinned wickedly. "After all, look at me. I love you, and here I am hurting you," he said before tossing his daughter across the room, her landing hard against the wall. Fluttershy cried as she turned to curl up into a ball, not wanting to be hurt anymore. "But I suppose you must really like being hurt if you're going to let a colt like you." Her father grinned, walking up to his daughter, kicking her in the back, causing her to cry out in pain. "Any colt that gets close to you will do nothing but hurt you. So I hope you enjoy this for the rest of your life. I'm sure you'll find a colt who loves you even more than I do." Her father laughed before walking off into his study. Fluttershy whimpered and cried where she curled up, remembering the colt from school had given her the candy bar. Suddenly, her mind filled with anger, hate for the colt who had given her the candy bar in the first place. All he wanted to do was hurt her. He wanted to get close to her so that she could make her cry and suffer, just like her father did. I hate colts, Fluttershy whimpered out loud. She vowed to herself that she would never like a colt or let a colt like her for as long as she lived. Another lump came into Fluttershy's throat. My father, he made me hate colts, she thought to herself. But I don't hate them. She knew better now. Not all colts were like her father. Not all of them would hurt her just because she got close to them. But she still had another interest in being with a colt. The only pony she'd ever fallen in love with was Rainbow Dash. Do I love Rainbow Dash for her, or because she was the only pony who got close to me that didn't hurt me? Fluttershy found herself confused by her own feelings now. Everything that she had believed in had turned upside down in a single moment. It felt like she had just been lying to herself all this time, and that everything she had done might have been a mistake. No, she had suddenly said firmly to herself. Because of Rainbow Dash, I came to Ponyville. I escaped from my father and met the best of friends I've ever had, friends who care about me more than anything else. I fell in love and had a wonderful relationship, she said, looking up at the ceiling. As thoughts of her friends came to mind. She remembered so many wonderful moments together with her friends, picking flowers, going to parties, playing games, sleepovers, tea parties, hanging out, adventuring. She'd done so much with her life now, even though she had forgotten about all of her foalhood because it was painful. It hadn't stopped her from moving on in her life, from experiencing all the wonders that life had to offer. If anything, because of her father had pushed her away, she had found a way to embrace the ponies that truly loved her. She took a deep breath as she calmed down, and a small smile formed on her face. Yes, even though all of this has happened, I still have my friends, she said, a warmth sparking inside of her heart. It gave her legs strength. She walked through the living room to the front door of the house. She could see the lock on the door, the lock with a symbol of a doll on it. She carefully reached into her bag and pulled out the key with the doll's symbol on it. The key she had picked up a while ago and still had. She'd carefully placed the key into the lock, the door letting out a click that had known had worked. She carefully pushed the door open and walked through the door. On the other side was a large room, almost like a small gymnasium. She walked forward to the middle of the room, where she stopped. A black fire was burning on the opposite side of the court, the fire slowly growing, rising up into the shape of a pony before red eyes appeared on its face, a white mouth opening, and it was a dark creature. Fluttershy stared at the creature. She didn't feel a heavy, overbearing presence this time. The creature was still drawing fear from her heart, but it wasn't overwhelming her now. She could stand before this creature now. The creature slowly turned itself around, showing its back to Fluttershy. Fluttershy looked at the creature curiously, not sure what it was doing. Then, as it turned around, she could see that hanging from its mouth was the body of Rainbow Dash. Fluttershy let out a gasp as the creature flicked its head, tossing the body towards Fluttershy. It landed right before her, hitting the ground with a thud. Fluttershy reached her hoof out and gently nudged the body. It was cold, and Rainbow Dash was dead, killed by the creature before her. Fluttershy stared at the body for a long while. The creature was watching her, grinning as it waited. Fluttershy moved her hoof away from the body, and a sad look appearing on her face, and she turned her head upwards to look at the dark creature before her. Father, she spoke softly. I understand now. She made sure she spoke clearly. I've done a horrible thing, and it's likely that I can never be forgiven for what I've done. I can't bring the dead back to life, and the blood of my mother is on my hoof still. Fluttershy closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath before continuing. I probably deserve all the punishment I received. No fool shall ever do what I did. Though it may have been tough living with what I did and receiving punishment for my deed, I lived with everything. She smiled softly. And I've grown up to have a wonderful life now. I've left behind all the things that made me sad, that hurt me, and made me miserable living at home. I have wonderful friends, animals that depend on me, a home that I take care of myself. I found love that didn't hurt me, she smiled softly. Fluttershy carefully stepped over the body before her, walking up closer to the dark creature. The smile of the creature faded as it looked down on her, as if not amused. Fluttershy came to stand just inches before him, looking up at him, smiling. "You brought a lot of pain to me, but I forgive you." She leaned in and nuzzled the chest of the dark creature. The creature let out a roar. "I forgive you for everything, and I thank you. Thank you for letting me find a wonderful life." An orb of bright white light appeared in the air above the two, floating down towards Fluttershy. The dark creature roared out in pain as the light gently floated past him, reaching Fluttershy's chest. The light engulfed her body, filling with a pleasant warmth. The bandages that covered her body began to unfurl. Each bandage was pulled away from her body, pulling around her as her body recovered. Her wings extended out. She stood on all of her legs, and she opened both eyes to look up at the roaring dark creature, which seemed to be fading away as the light shined. The very existence of the creature seemed to be fading away, burning up in the bright light that surrounded her. The last bits of darkness that made up the creature disappeared as the light began to slowly fade. Fluttershy smiled softly as she looked down, seeing on her chest, in the place of a lantern, was now a golden necklace with a pink butterfly-shaped jewel. For a moment, her necklace glowed once more. A beam of light shot out, creating a doorway in the light before her. Fluttershy looked at the doorway of light, knowing what it was. "So this is my way home now," she said, looking at the door. Once she had passed through the archway of the light, she would leave this world. She would go back to Ponyville. She would be able to take everything she had learned and live a better life than she had before. "But I can't leave just yet." She smiled at the doorway before turning around and running away from the light. "I have 2 friends who are lost and need my help." Pinkie Pie lay on the ground, panting and in exhaustion. "You've been running away oh so well, and you're really good at it." Yellow Pinkie smiled, walking towards Pinkie. "You've killed me 3 times, and yet here I am again. You must really want to be a part of my parties." Yellow Pinkie laughed. Pinkie Pie could only sob. This other Pinkie wanted to kill, and she couldn't stop her. What was the point of trying to stop her? She let Fluttershy go and get separated twice now. She was probably dead with how injured she had been, and Rainbow Dash had hated her. What was the point of trying to stop her other self from killing when she was just as guilty as herself? "I'm sorry, Bellamina," Pinkie sobbed, closing her eyes. "Oh well, I guess I just have to take my time playing with you then." The other Pinkie smiled, picking up her butcher's knife as she drew closer. "Now just hold it for a minute, just for 1 minute," came a motherly demand. Pinkie and the other Pinkie snapped their heads to the door of the room they were in. There stood a yellow Pegasus pony with long pink hair, wearing her element of harmony, the element of kindness. Having your mother ever told you it's not nice to hurt other ponies?" Fluttershy stomped across the room towards the other Pinkie Pie. The normal Pinkie Pie was just staring with her mouth agape. "Well, yeah, but I'm not really hurting them. I'm playing with them." The other Pinkie laughed, putting down her butcher's knife to talk to Fluttershy. "That is not how you play nice with other ponies." Fluttershy stood up, and the other Pinkie, looking her straight in the eye. "You are going to seriously hurt my friend. You don't use knives or sharp objects when you play. You play nice games, like pin a tail on a pony or bobbing for apples. You should know better than this." "But," the other Pinkie began to protest. "No buts. You should be ashamed of yourself. I have half a mind to tell your mother the kind of games you've been playing with other ponies." The other Pinkie seemed to be shrieking back in the scolding of Fluttershy. Now that you're going to take your little things, get rid of them, and I never want to catch you doing this again. You got that?" The other Pinkie could only nervously nod her head rapidly before picking up her butcher's knife and turning and running away from Fluttershy. "That's a good second, Pinkie Pie." Fluttershy smiled happily, seeing the other Pinkie run off before turning to the real Pinkie Pie, who was staring in shock at Fluttershy. "How was that? I was so assertive." Fluttershy slowly chuckled as she felt happy, a shiver go down her back. Pinkie Pie stared. It was a long time to ever register what was going on, but once it dawned on her Fluttershy that had just scared off her other self, a smile formed on her face. It quickly began to grow, before a sound escalated to her lips. Pinkie Pie began to laugh. She laughed hard, rolling over on her back as her hooves flailed in the air. Fluttershy had scared away the very thing that had scared her to the core, and she had done it just by being Fluttershy. Pinkie couldn't help but laugh as her hair poofed out into its usual curls. It was one of the funniest things she had ever seen. "Thank you," Fluttershy said, smiling, giving a small bow to Pinkie Pie, accepting the laughing as a compliment. "Oh, Fluttershy!" Pinkie laughed, finally rolling back onto her hooves and rushing up, hugging her friend dearly. "You're all better, and you saved me!" Pinkie laughed joyously. "Hey, what are friends for?" Fluttershy grinned, returning the hug. "Oh, speaking of friends, have you seen Rainbow Dash?" Pinkie said, looking at Fluttershy with concern again. "Don't worry, I found you first, but we're not leaving until we find her." "Right. Operation Locate Dashie is on go." Pinkie Pie smiled happily, saluting Fluttershy. "It really is for the best." "Yeah, and it's what I wanted after all." Rainbow Dash tilted her head, closing her eyes as she agreed. "I'm glad to see that you've been able to follow your true heart then," the voice laughed. Rainbow Dash opened her eyes to look at the pony that stood before her. She looked just like one of the Shadow Bolts, the flying team that she had seen in the Everfree Forest the day she had taken down the Nightmare Moon. "It's what I've always done. No point in changing that now." She was slowly looking around. The two of them were sitting in the middle of the burning building, the fire standing just far enough not to burn him. "Good, now just take my hoof, and everything will be made clear," the Shadow Bolt said, holding her hoof out to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash looked at the hoof hesitantly. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the right thing to do, but she felt it was the only thing she could do anymore. She slowly raised her hoof, reaching out to carefully take the Shadow Bolt's hoof. "Dashie!" came an insanely cheerful voice as Rainbow Dash was suddenly tackled from behind, flattened against the ground. The Shadow Bolt gasped loudly. "What the? Hey, Pinkie Pie!" Rainbow shouted, annoyed, still being embraced by the pink mare. "Oh my gosh, I thought I'd lost you, and as you ran off, I was so worried that I tried to find you on Fluttershy, only I started running into the monsters that I ran in before, and man, I was so depressed because of what you said, and instead I couldn't help but start to relive the nightmares here, but that's all okay now, because I forgive you, and now that I found you again," Pinkie cried out happily at once. "Yeah, it's great, Pinkie Pie, but you're crushing me." Rainbow groaned as she tried to sit up, and Pinkie finally sliding off her. "Oopsie, sorry about that." Pinkie laughed. "And what are you doing here anyway? I told you we were supposed to look for Fluttershy." Rainbow stopped herself as her eyes went wide. "Fluttershy! Oh my gosh, I totally forgot!" Rainbow said, looking around rapidly. "What am I doing here? I have to find Fluttershy." "It's okay, Dash. I'm already here." Fluttershy smiled happily, walking into the burning room from the hallway. Pinkie just ran through at blinding speed. "Fluttershy, you're okay!" Rainbow said, galloping over and hugging her mare friend. "What was I thinking? You were right in front of me not too long ago, and I completely forgot I had to protect you." Fluttershy laughed, hugging Rainbow Dash back. "It's okay, Dash. This place does weird things to a pony." "Hey!" the Shadow Bolt yelled, standing up, glaring at the three mares before her. All three turned their heads to look at the Shadow Bolt. "What about your dreams? You won't accomplish them if you don't come with me," she growled. Rainbow Dash looked at Fluttershy. Fluttershy smiled back at her before Rainbow grinned, turned to look at the Shadow Bolt. "Tell you what, keep it for now. I'll find a way to achieve my dream on my own." The Shadow Bolt yelled before turning into a puff of black smoke and disappearing into the burning building. "And don't come back!" Pinkie yelled happily, waving the puff of black smoke. "Fluttershy, I'm so sorry," Rainbow said again. "I shouldn't have let this place go to my head and forget about protecting you." Dash then turned to Pinkie Pie, who was smiling at Dash. "And Pinkie, I'm sorry I yelled at you. That wasn't right of me to do that when you were only trying to help." "That's okay, Dashie. I forgive you," Pinkie said, and giving Rainbow Dash another hug. "Let's just focus on getting out of here." "I can handle that." Fluttershy smiled happily. She turned herself towards the hallway and stood proudly. Her golden necklace began to softly glow before releasing a beam of light that shot out before them. A doorway of light formed their exit home. The element of harmony around Fluttershy's neck serves its purpose. Turned back into an orb of light, floating up into the air before disappearing. "Alright, let's go home." Pinkie smiled happily. "Yeah, I'm kinda tired of this place," Dash grinned. All of us are, Fluttershy smiled. The three mares walked through the doorway of light together.